more then. There we go. Door opens.
I thought I'll just give you a brief background of Nepal. I'm not sure, many of you might already be aware of this. This is the flag of Nepal. It's very unique. It's the only country which is not rectangular. And apparently it's very mathematically very challenging to draw one. As you know, Mount Everest, that's in Nepal. In fact, 8 of the 14 over 8,000 meter peak are in Nepal. And obviously Gurkhas, brave soldiers. Someone once said, if somebody says, if you're not fear of dying, either he's lying or he's a Gurkha. And Buddha was born in Nepal. On 25th of April, it was a Saturday, people were doing their normal stuff. Just before noon, earthquake struck of 7.8 magnitude, which lasted for just over a minute. That changed the life of millions of people in Nepal. And this was followed by several aftershocks and another major earthquake on the 12th of May. This is a tower. It's equivalent to a Big Ben of Kathmandu, where you could just pay to walk up to the tower and get the 360-degree panoramic view of the city. This was brought down to its knees. It was estimated around 400 people was trapped, and they died under this. This was a story up and down the country. Most of the villages, even cities, were just wiped out. This is not the first time this has happened. In fact, it happens once every 100 years or so, this one sort of major earthquake. This is an earthquake from 84 years ago. That's my granddad used to tell me about. Again, as you can see, that tower was brought down by this earthquake. And it took decades to rebuild. In fact, there was one earthquake, I think, in 12th century, that even claimed life of the king of Nepal. So as you can see, Nepal is very geographically very different country. So it's only 120 miles in breadth, and it starts from the sea level to the top of Mount Everest. So it's a very steep hill, and the towns and cities are spaced out in between these valleys. And geographically, that is very challenging to reach. What's happened in the last few decades has been rapid urbanization. People are building houses, poor planning, and it was just growing. Everybody knew the earthquake was coming, but no one cared at that time until it happened. So I was speaking to my mum and dad when this happened, and I could hear screaming, my mum, over phone. I didn't know what was happening. It was very upsetting on the day, and it was only the day after my wife told me that I should go and help out when you're able to give something back to your country. So what I did was I spoke to my partners, and they were very, very generous. They gave me compassionate leave at a short notice, even though it upset a few patients who had appointments cancelled that week. And I emailed chemists, local practices. Within less than 24 hours, my room was full of all these boxes of medical equipment and dressings and whatnot. I got a lot of support from patients and staff on the day. So I landed in Nepal with around 20 boxes of medical equipment. One thing that was quite interesting, as soon as I landed, this popped up on my Facebook app. It was to check in that I was safe. So because people were ringing each other so much, all the phone lines were virtually impossible to get. So this is the way to make sure that you are safe, and also to know that your friends and family are safe. And Facebook was a very, very good method of communication at that time. So when I reached the airport, as expected, it was a chaos there. The runway was full of, army choppers from all different countries. Believe it or not, I reached exactly on time when I was meant to reach, but my luggage didn't arrive, so I had to go back the following day to collect it. So I went around to see, and all these things, where I grew up with, all my childhood, it was all brought down. It was rubbles everywhere. It was like the country was hit with hit with a bomb, and it was like the country was at war, but we had no enemy. Believe it or not, this is the top floor of a 4-story building. The interesting story with this, I was speaking to the woman was in tears, who lost her son under this. He had come out after the earthquake, but went back in half an hour later to get his phone, to let others know he was safe. But this came down with the aftershock, and he was trapped and he died. So wherever you looked, there was devastation everywhere. It wasn't just humans, it was animals were affected. We couldn't have tea, there was no milk. And you would have thought with something like this, you'd get a community centre, people will help each other out, but there was nothing there, there was no planning whatsoever. This is how people were living for several weeks immediately after the earthquake. But one good thing I found was the community spirit that people had there. Again, in Facebook, they would just announce at 4 o'clock we're meeting at this place, get your dustpan, brushes, whatever you can, and they'll just gather together and they'll start cleaning up the street. One good thing, what I was worried about immediately after the earthquake was infectious diseases. Luckily, we didn't have any. I know in Haiti they were struck with cholera after the earthquake, but because of this community spirit, cleaning, they were very good with hygienes, we didn't get any infectious disease after the earthquake. And there was, again, a sense of community feeling. There was like communal kitchen, people were feeding each other, doing whatever they could in the time of need. And believe it or not, this is somebody driving in the streets of Kathmandu. Like you see, the headlight's still on. There was a program for the Rod Gilbert, I think, World's Most Dangerous Road. They also got World's Most Dangerous Drivers as well. So I had all these stuff, I didn't know what to do with them. I donated quite a few to hospitals I was in contact with, and we looked around and we thought we'll go out and visit these people who are in need, do something that I'm good at. It was interesting to see that most of the help had reached only to places where there were mass casualties, and there were villages, they were untouched just because people hadn't died. So we targeted those sort of villages and we went around. We took these mats for them to sleep on, all this food, collecting pellets and buckets, and we loaded up in a car, and then we just went. We'd made a day trip from Kathmandu to distant villages, the places we can't even reach, so we asked all the villagers to come down, and we would supply all the food materials, and I'd start doing my medical checks whilst my friends were doing distribution. And even then, when we were sitting there to do this, we were getting constant aftershocks. The earth was shaking. This probably was the best, safest place to be at that time. So whilst all this was going there, I was very fortunate to get some help from here as well. Staff had done cake bake at the surgery, and Southwell Medical User Group, one of our patient participation group, they were very active and very supportive of my cause as well. I may just take this opportunity. I know Dennis is here somewhere. Dennis, there. He's the chairman of Southwell Medical User Group. They're a very good group. They work as an intermediate level between patients and us. They help patients as well as a practice. I know they're always looking for new members, and I'm sure if you are interested, they'll be more than happy to invite you and welcome you with open arms. Right, after a hard day's work, obviously we need food as well. So I just wanted to show you this momos. I'm not sure how many people have been to a Nepalese restaurant. This is something that you find with starters. It's like if you go to a fish and chips shop and if you not have fish, it's the same equivalent to not having momos if you go to a Nepalese restaurant. So it's a steamed, it's got chicken, lamb inside as well. Well, I'm salivating just having a look at it. So do have one. You won't regret it next time when you go to Nepalese. Life was going on as usual. This was a sports bar. When we were relaxing, we were watching Chelsea-Liverpool match that Saturday. And as you can see, the tank had fallen off through the roof. So the health and safety was not just out of windows, off the roof as well. I came back, it was my short stay, I stayed there for 11 days. I landed here just before the second earthquake struck, so I didn't get a chance to experience that. So one of the things that struck me, I was speaking to a lot of villagers, they said, you know, we're farmers, we can eat, grow potatoes, we've got clothes, all we need is a roof over our head. And that really struck me, and I thought, you know, there's something more I can do to this. And myself, along with my friends here, as well as in Nepal, we decided to start a project where we would build quite simple project where we would build corrugated sheet with some metal framework and give a family of up to 5 to 8 people under this, just to save them from the monsoon, which was coming pretty soon. I was very fortunate. Again, I had a lot of help from patients in Southwell, as well as from Riverside Church in Southwell. And within 10 days or so, I don't know how they managed to do it, but they raised £15,000 for this cause. So we started work as soon as we could. We were racing against time. One, because we needed to get these people protected from monsoon, and the second is also because of the monsoon, the next thing that happens is landslides, and the roads becomes impassable. So we had to do as soon as we could. So we did do quite a lot. It wasn't just that we have to, you know, these boys had to carry literally to top of the hills to build these. So they were teaching them to do it. They were supplying it. We made over 40 of these houses, and also supplied same number and taught them how to build these temporary metal shelters. So it took like 4 people around 2 to 3 hours to build it. Finished product, you know, quite simple. That's where they could protect themselves from monsoon. And this is the happy family. So I went back in November just to check and meet people who we helped. I spoke to quite a lot of people just to check what help they received from the government. Unfortunately, nothing. They were given compensation of £100 equivalent, basically to do themselves. And it was quite, I feel quite happy to see all this sea of houses, you know, that we built, and from the help that we received from Southwell. And this is their house. So this time I was more prepared. We got 4x4 this time, as you can see. So we thought about going to the epicenter of the earthquake, to Gurkha village. Unfortunately, there were landslides. It was a very, very difficult journey. We had to abandon our car and we had to walk from there. When you're reaching the top, you know, 6-7 months on, it's still the same. They don't even have money to bring these sort of houses down. This is the school. As you can see, these are different classrooms. There are rubbles everywhere. It was very frustrating, as well as very inspiring to see these kids as well, who would walk half an hour just to reach. And they're very keen to learn. So I had an opportunity to hand over donations to 3 schools. And one of the things the headmaster showed me was how they're utilising this money. They were building, they're making chairs, tables, and they're also buying furniture for the school. As you can see at the back, that was the school, and still like that. We did donate a few computers as well to Teachers Delight. Most of the kids, they hadn't even seen a computer in their life. And also had an opportunity to help orphanage that I visited. They were housing few kids who's lost their parents, and we donated food. They told me it would last for a month. I also had help locally from Newark, Lizzie Ann wool shop, and also quite a lot of blankets were donated. I dropped in at my surgery, which I managed to take with me, and was very, very satisfying to see happy kids. I worked with Sue Layden. I'm not sure if you know Sue. She's the daughter of Lord Hunt. Lord Hunt is the expedition leader of Tenzing Hillary, 1953, where they conquered the Mount Everest. She happened to live locally, and we got to know each other through talking. And we did a presentation to Southwell Rotary Club as well, who were very kindly donated, you know, to our amazement, £10,000 to rebuild schools in Nepal. happy story. This boy was pulled out through rubbles after 22 hours and was reunited with a mother. This is our current project at the moment. We're trying to build 3 schools. As you can see, this school, very remote part of Nepal. The frame structure is still standing, but we are collecting money to build the walls. All these kids are still under tents, and that's where their classes are, in intense heat. But these kids never complain. I also had some support locally from East Bridgeford. They managed to do some jumble sale, and they raised £2,000. They just gave it to me last week. Very thankful to them. All this inspiration came to me after reading this book. I happened to meet the author in one of the charity event last year. He's a very ordinary man. He used to, graze sheep and used to live in the hilly area of Mount Everest. And he had a dream of being a pilot, but he just didn't have an opportunity. He somehow managed to get through the school that was built by Tenzing and Edmund Hillary, and he with hard work, he did succeed, and he was a pilot. He did become a pilot for Nepalese Airlines. Now he's a pilot for German Wings. So it just goes on to show, if these kids are given opportunities, they can do very well. Just opportunity is what they need. They need a chance. And that's why I appeal, and I have been, to help to our project. I'm very, very thankful to everybody who's helped so far. And the donation is just a short-term help that you can do. On a long term, Nepal is a beautiful country. Tourism is the backbone, and that's the way to jumpstart the economy. And probably this is the best time to visit. I've met a friend recently who'd been to Nepal in January, and she was telling me about, the welcome she received as she was the first customer to that hotel after the earthquake. So please do visit if you're thinking. If you want to get involved in any project, get in touch with me. I'll put that email address at the end. To end it all, I would like to show you a video just to warn you. There are a few distressing images on this. So I know this is just before lunchtime, but just a warning. Okay, thank you. That song was compiled by one of our team members. We've been using this like a promotional video every time. It has worked. It just sends out a very good message, and the message that we want. Last but not least, once again, I would like to thank everybody at Southwell. I've had overwhelming response, and I'm still getting wishes as well as donations, which I can't have words to thank. And above all, I would like to thank my wife. She's been the rock. I go out, have fun, but she's the one left behind here to care for my little one. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm delighted to be here today to join you at what I believe is a very important event for Southwell. As chairman of the County Council's Community Safety Committee, I'm very clear about the importance of planning and preparing for emergencies. My committee must satisfy itself that the County Council is ready to play its full part in the response to any major emergency affecting Nottinghamshire. And I'm very confident that we are able to do that. And I just at that, I will pay tribute to Rob Fisher, who is here today, and I know he'll be speaking later, and the team in the Emergency Planning Department, and our other staff who do such a great job in their preparations for such emergencies, which we hope we never have to use, but unfortunately on occasions we do. And also a credit to them when they are involved in emergencies. They are, I believe, and I've been around the country, they are some of the best in the country at emergency planning. I also take a close interest in how prepared our partners are, the police, the fire service, the ambulance service and others. And I attend emergency exercises when I can see live rehearsals of their emergency plans in action. And this satisfies me that the authorities in Nottinghamshire are as well placed as they can be to respond well when an emergency happens. However, as the people of Southwell know very well, an emergency can happen very quickly. And as a consequence, it may be difficult for the emergency services and the council services to be here quickly. This is particularly true in severe weather incidents such as flooding and blizzards. And you may not be the only community affected. And so resources do become stretched. In this situation, there may be an initial period when the community is largely on its own. And in that vital early period, a little bit of pre-planning and the right communications can make a world of difference. You can ensure your family is safe and see that vulnerable neighbours are okay, or if they need help. Then when the emergency services do arrive, you can point them to the priority issues and guide them to local resources. By being prepared, you can be as resilient as possible to the traumatic impacts that emergencies can bring. And it's wonderful to see Southwell becoming an ever more resilient community. I want to congratulate the Southwell Flood Forum and all of you for your foresight in planning for emergencies. By your preparedness to take action yourselves and in concert with the emergency services and others, you will save lives and reduce suffering in future emergencies affecting your town. I'm particularly pleased that one of the ways in which you've prepared is to have embraced the County Council's Highway Flood Road Closure Scheme. And I'm pleased that so many volunteers have been trained to implement the scheme, should it be needed in a flood emergency. Finally, can I say that I know not everyone here today is from Southwell, and I want to encourage those of you who are here from other communities to follow the excellent model being developed in Southwell and make your own community resilient to whatever challenges you may face in the future. Once again, can I say thank you for the kind invitation today. I found it really interesting. I've had a look at the booklet that you've produced. I think that's absolutely fantastic, and we ought to look at how we can get that out to other communities. I think it's first rate, so congratulations to you all. And like many others, and I'm sure like you, I hope that really all we are doing is just preparing and that we never again have to put things into action but I'm sure that you'll be more prepared than most to deal with those situations. So congratulations. Thank you.
I don't get introduction, it's fine. My name's James Parker. I'm the Community Resilience and Emergency Planning Lead for Southwell Flood Forum. I just wanted to say a few words to welcome you to the formal part of our annual refresher training. This is the second in our history of the Southwell Flood Forum. So we're into our second year of emergency planning for the road closure scheme. Today we're going to cover a refresher element of the practical section as well outside. So Rob Fisher will be taking you outside as well to practice doing the signs and signing that off. When that's completed, we will come back in. We will have to sign all the audit documentation to make sure we're all covered. So if you could all make sure you come back up here after the outdoor training. I just wanted to highlight this that we've produced to accompany the Supporting Resilience Southwell campaign. This is the Southwell Community Resilience Handbook, which will be distributed to every household in Southwell. And it's a simple guide that tells you how to be more resilient, but more importantly, it's the first mass communication to the town of the community road closure scheme. So everybody should be more aware of what we do and, more importantly, why we're doing it. If you've got any questions about the detail of the magazine or the road closure scheme, speak to me or Jackie or Rob Fisher after the sessions. That's all from me. I'm going to hand over to Rob, and he's going to go through the first element of the training.
Thank you, James. Good afternoon, everybody. As James has explained, we have to annually do a refresher of the road closure scheme. Those of you who are volunteers, you've been trained before, you've had a refresher before, have a refresher today. It's part of the deal for legally being able to close the roads. I have to say from the very outset, bear in mind that stepping into the traffic potentially is very dangerous. In a flood emergency more so, it needs to be done in a very systematic way and a planned way, and that's what this training is all about. James has also mentioned that immediately after this brief refresher training, I'll give you the theory. We will go outside. I'm joined by Mick Greenaway, many of you will have seen before, from County Highways. Myself and Mick will set out the signs as you would in a real emergency and give you the opportunity to handle the signs yourselves. Okay, so why do we have a scheme? Well, you'll recall there are two prime reasons. When you have floods across roads, one thing is that you can have cars going through the water, creating a bow wave, washing water into properties. Some properties that might not otherwise have been affected at all, others just making matters a lot worse. And at the same time, in some places, such as on Nottingham Road in Southwell, it is tremendously dangerous for the drivers, and they wouldn't necessarily realise it as they drive into the water, imagining it's shallow, and in places it could be very deep. For those two reasons, bow waves and the safety of motorists, it's important to close the road very quickly. And that's what Glynn was saying. At that moment that you need to close it, highways might not be there. But what we're asking trained volunteers to do is to do what highways would do if they were there, and to close the road with the same materials in the same system that highways would use. Just a reminder of the journey you've been on. This has been through already. We did a lot of work with volunteers to look at problem areas, think back to the experiences of 2013 and look at areas and decide precisely where we needed to close the roads. That led to the creation of a policy document that included the triggers, and this is crucial, I'll come back to triggers, the points where you will actually close the roads safely and in a planned way. It needs to be accompanied by risk assessments. You need to attend generic training about water safety. There'll be the fire service coming on later on to do that. And specific training, actually at the point where you are going to close the road, so you're familiar with the surroundings. And we've handed over the signs, so you now have all of those signs. In this training, I have to emphasise the legal aspects to this. You are working as volunteers on behalf of the County Council. We had legal advice at the beginning to verify that you can legally close the roads. You wouldn't be causing a obstacle in the roadway illegally. You'd be acting on behalf of the County Council. The overall responsibility remains with the County Council. That's why it's crucial. You need to have training. We need to do the risk assessments. And in this presentation, if you follow that guidance and you put the signs out in the prescribed place according to the right triggers, if there is something that happens, you're covered. You're covered by the County Council's own insurance. You don't need to worry about that. In this refresher training, I have to emphasise that if it's not you doing it, somebody, a friend of yours who hasn't had the training is doing it for you because you're not there. If they're maybe not putting the signs out in the right place and in the right manner, according to the right trigger, they expose themselves to a lot of potential problems. They would not, in that situation, be covered by the County Council's insurance. This is the set of equipment to close the road. We have also actually got a sign that says slow, so there is an extra. Most sets have got a sign that says slow. You'll remember from your previous training, as you approach the area where you want to close the road, you'd put out signs that say flood, and that would be on the side of the road. A couple of cones on either side. This is so that drivers can see as they approach that there's a problem in ahead. The next sign, road ahead closed, again on the curb side with a couple of cones on either side. And then at the point where the road is actually going to be closed, if the trigger is reached, then you put these right across the middle of the road. Road closed, 2 cones either side, and there are lamps that fit onto the top of the cones. But you only do that when a specific point has been reached. For example, water reaching a particular level. At that point, the trigger's reached, and you can put the signs out. And this is all recorded in the policy document. It's quite clear. We've planned ahead, planned with you where these triggers are going to be and what signs are required at which points. And it is all in maps. And I've put this particular map on specifically because this is a change. Those of you who've been trained before, this is the map you saw in the past with a road closure point 20 at the end of Farthingate. You'll see in the handbook now that road closure point, we don't have it anymore in the scheme, so I mention it particularly because that is a change from the past. There are lots of other roads leading into roads that are going to be closed, and we don't close all of those, so that's why we don't, we've removed number 20. Highlight it to you particularly because that's a change from last year. Need to emphasise again the risk assessment point perspective. In presentations later on, we will be saying more about manual handling, for example, but there's a couple of things on that list which I wanted to highlight to you in particular. Lone working, we don't recommend lone working. Please, we've got a lot of volunteers in Southwell, and we encourage you not to try and do this on your own. Lots of reasons for that, but the one at the bottom of the list is on that list, the reasons for not lone working. You will come across drivers who will be intent on wanting to drive through, and you may well find yourselves in some conflicts. Emotions will be heightened by the circumstances. They may be desperate to get to somewhere and determined to go through whatever you say. And we don't encourage you to lie down the road in front of vehicles. We want you to do the risk assessment and obviously act on account of that. So there will be circumstances where you're encouraging a motorist to take a different route, or at the very least to go through very slowly to avoid bow waves and getting into difficulties. This is where we should be now. Before it happens, as Glynn says, we hope it doesn't, but if it does, at this point you'll have identified points where the equipment is stored. Those of you who have volunteered for particular road closure points hopefully you are aware exactly where your set of signs are being kept, and you'll have planned exactly how you're going to get them from storage out to the road. And if you're unclear on that at this point, please talk to us today to decide exactly where we're going to store them and how you're going to transport them. Okay. And obviously you need to be alert all the time now to the weather forecast. Hopefully many of you will have seen Hazel Reeves' presentation from the Met Office. She's repeating it this afternoon if you haven't seen it yet, but she'll tell you all the different ways the Met Office are going to keep us informed about when severe weather is expected. Then, in response to those alerts, or in response to a particularly bad weather forecast, you need to then be thinking about moving the signs out to the side of the road, putting them in position, obviously facing away from the oncoming traffic at that stage. Review your risk assessment and be vigilant for the triggers being met. It may be that you're looking for the water to come across the road at a particular point, or to reach a particular height in relation to the curb, or in relation to another tangible fixed point. Watch for the triggers, and if those triggers are reached, close the road. Keep in touch. You'll hear later on about the communications hub. Keeping in contact to make sure people know where you are, know you're safe, know that the road has been closed. Then, because of the nature, the road then has been flooded over, it's needed to be closed, the road will become hazardous even when the water has receded. There'll be a silt left on the surface of the road. It may well need to be cleaned, and that's where highways will do that as they come along afterwards, assess its safety, if necessary, clean it, and they will open the road. Okay, now we're going to go outside now, but before I ask you to stand up and join me outside, are there any immediate questions from what you've heard so far? Okay.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Thanks for attending this afternoon. James and the Flood Forum have asked me to come up again. I may have spoken to some of you previously at previous Flood Forum events that I've done. Obviously, I'm representing Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service, and I'm here this afternoon just to give you a bit of an awareness around the dangers that we get with flood water, whether that's standing or moving flood water when we get heavy downfalls of rain and that sort of thing. I understand that some of you may be flood wardens already, road closure wardens, those sorts of things. Some of you may be coming to do that sort of role. And it's just to give you an idea, not only when you're in that role and carrying out that task, but also for those of you, as I'm sure most of you are parents, and some of these dangers, it's information that you need to pass on to not only your own families, but other families, other siblings, etc. I have to say right at the beginning that there are some images that within this that some people might find a little bit disturbing. I'm not here to scare people, I'm not here to upset anybody, but I need to make the point that flood water can be very, very dangerous. It can be fatal. Okay, so we do need to give it the appropriate amount of respect that it demands. Okay, let's have a look at a few facts and figures. Okay, facts and figures from ROSPA. These figures are probably 3 years old now. This hasn't been updated for a while, but year on year, we're looking around sort of 600-700 drownings a year. Now that's not all to do with flood water and stuff, but we'll break that down a little bit further. 403 of those are inland drowning incidents. So that's in water, so it's not rivers, not coastal, yeah, but inland drowning. So static water, ponds, reservoirs, quarries, these sorts of things where admittedly children probably go most of the time in the warmer weather, but it just proves that this is a major problem when we're looking at inland waterways. 352 rivers, streams, etc. So again, a stream, something like the Potwell Dyke, although there's only at this time of year 6 to 8 inches of water in it, if we've got the wrong people in that environment, then yes, that can be fatal. Fall into there, face down, a young child, we've got a fatality on our hands straight away. The age group, that, as it says there, are predominantly at risk of this are males 15 to 35. Why do we think that's the case? Irresponsibility, yeah, to be fair. Bravado. You know, it's the old machismo that comes in, oh, I'll be all right, I can do this, I can do that. And in fact, all inland waterways are classed as cold water. The average temperature of an inland waterway is somewhere between 10 and 15 degrees. So on a nice warm day like today, and you think, oh, it's really warm, jump in there, it's very cold, and automatically we're suffering with cold water shock. So that's why it affects this sort of group, because all of a sudden nice and warm to nice and cold, can't survive. Okay, and you can get into difficulties within 2 or 3 minutes when suffering from cold water shock. So let's have a look at the drowning problem. There's little chance for those who get into difficulties in water, especially water which is deep, fast flowing or cold, or all of those three. Got a little bit of a video coming in a couple of slides time just to show how fast flowing floodwater can be. And floodwater that's moving at 6 inches deep on a tarmac or a concrete surface, so a road, could quite easily wash you off your feet, even if it's only 6 to 8 inches deep, and it's quite surprising. You may think, well, I've got my wellies on, I can wade through that, but all of a sudden, no traction and you're away. And once you've fallen over, it will just wash you away. It's relentless. The flow of water doesn't stop. No one can turn the tap off. Yeah, so you'll just keep going. So that's why people get into difficulties very, very easily. Drowning, obviously, is the final and deadly condition, and drowning is surprisingly easy to occur. A big misconception with drowning is people think to drown, I've got to go under the water, I've got to be held underwater and not be able to breathe. And that's not the case. Just breathing in a small quantity of water can cause you to drown, because it affects the respiratory process within your lungs, and unfortunately you suffocate because you've got water or fluid in your lungs. So it's not a case of having to be submerged for any period of time. And that death, for those that may not be aware, can happen 72 hours after you've inhaled the water. It's a term that's called secondary drowning. So you may well fall in, breathe some in, stand up, go home, lay down in bed and drown. And you're actually at home in bed, nice and cosy. So again, it's an important thing to be aware when we're working around water. Okay, those who cannot swim will drown in seconds. That is probably something that is pretty obvious to you. If you can't swim, you've got no chance. Are we all confident swimmers that we've got in the room? Everyone happy that if we went and jumped in the leisure centre we could swim a few lengths? Probably not. But in moving water it's even harder to get a balance, harder to stay above the water without breathing anything in. Those that do drown may not be seen again until recovered many days later, and this is a problem. Certainly in rural areas where we've got lots of what we call strainers and things like that, if someone does get washed away in a large flow of water, they could be held underneath the water for many days. And then we're looking at, as we've got the police dive team, I know it's not the dive team that are with it, but the dive truck outside, they're the people that ultimately turn up to go and find whoever it is that we've lost. So it can be pretty serious stuff. So, this drowning chain, how do we get into it? Well, clearly, ignorance, disregard or misjudgment of the danger. And this is where, as we spoke about with these males 15 to 35, not aware of what's going on, yeah? Think they can do more than they actually can do. If the Flood Forum are sending some of you guys out to do road closures, to be flood wardens, to pass the message around about where the floodwaters and things are, does that make you aware of all the hazards? Because you've been told you can go out into these waters? I would argue not. Okay, you could quite easily misjudge something, a flow of water that's coming down the area that you need to be working in. Do you know where all the hazards are in your area? We're going to look at some of those potential hazards that you might have. You need to know where they are in the specific areas that you're going to work, so you know not to go near them. The lay of the land looks totally different when it's submerged underwater. And misjudging distances. I'm sure there's a culvert here somewhere. I'm sure it's 3 or 4 metres that way, one step and you're in it, because you can't read the land. Very easy to do. Unrestricted access. You're obviously going to have that if you're going to be a flood warden. You're sort of allowed to go out and wander around. That's not really the idea. The idea is to keep you safe. Yeah? So, yes, you've got unrestricted access, but so have family members, kids that want to go out. Oh, come on, Mum, let me go out and I can go paddling in the puddles outside. What if someone's paddling in the road where it's 6 inches deep of water, but the manhole cover's lifted. All of a sudden, it's not 6 inches, it's a 12-foot drop into a main sewer. Gone. Okay, so these hazards are there, even though the water may look very innocuous, may not be fast flowing, but the dangers can still be there. Okay, absence of adequate supervision, that sort of rolls on nicely from what I've just spoken about with regards looking after family members. I've seen images through my career of people out wading waist deep in flood water, might have some sort of a pole to try and find stuff, but are they being supervised? Are they being supervised correctly? Should anybody be in flood water? No, not really. Unfortunately, if your house is affected, then the best thing you can do is stay indoors, get yourself to a place of safety inside, and we'll come and get you. That's what we're there for. You've probably seen, I hope you've seen some of the equipment we've got outside, boats, pathways, all the water rescue kit that we bring along. That's what we're there for. We're there to collect you and your family and relatives and things and take them to a place of safety. So you shouldn't be out paddling around in it. Okay, and an inability to save yourself or be rescued, like I've already said. I'm going to look at a clip now, but if you get washed away, we may not be able to rescue in some situations, depending on how fast flowing that water is. But the chances are, if you've not got the PPE that we've got, you won't be able to save yourself at all. Right, hopefully this video clip will play. There is no sound. Now this video clip, before I play it, it's quite dated, and it does come from the US. And the flood water that we're in, for those that may or may not be aware, the US have quite a few flood channels in bigger cities that are bone dry most of the time, good downfall of rain, and the flood channels fill up. And we've got here is a young girl, she's around about 15 or 16, that has been caught by members of the public and the police department by line, but she's stuck in the middle of a flood channel, okay? And it's sort of a bit of the ongoing rescue that is unsuccessful, I have to say. So let's talk through it. Okay. So we can see straight away that we've got, that's a police officer that's gone in to try and help rescue, and he's been pulled in, and his colleagues are trying to rescue him. Now we can see there's a line, he's got one arm snagged around, but we can see how fast that flow is. How deep do you think that water is? Any ideas? It's about a foot deep, yeah. Just, you know, in a few minutes, the young girl, unfortunately, does try to stand up in it. But you can see how fast it's flowing. When he finally gets pulled out, you'll see how much debris is wrapped around him. And that's the casualty out on the far side there, that's caught with the line under her arms, trying desperately to hang on. No chance of standing up, none whatsoever. Now, I've no idea how she ended up in that situation. But as we rescue, look at all the debris that's caught around him, stuff that we can't see. So, of course, that's adding to the weight. He's struggling to hold on. He's a very fit, well-trained policeman. Unfortunately, she's stuck there. And this, like I mentioned right at the beginning, it's relentless, it's powerful, it's never going to give up. That's a sofa. Okay? And there she goes, she tries to stand up. Not a chance. The picture's not the best in the world. But unfortunately, as the video pans out, we can see where the flood channel's going. And that was it. Washed away and gone. Okay? And she was recovered later on when the flood water had subsided. Now, yeah, it's quite a large event, admittedly quite a large event. Something we don't have a hazard like that in our local area. Not quite as large as that. But we'll look at some as I move on a little bit further that we certainly have got. So, sometimes it rains too much, and I don't know how many of you in the room were affected by the large-scale flooding that we had 3 years ago now. Possibly quite a few of you were quite seriously affected by that. And you've probably heard this before. We can't do a lot about it because sometimes it rains too much, and it does, to be fair. 1 inch of rainfall over 1 square mile gives us 14.5 million gallons of water. So where's that all going to go? Sometimes we may have, unless we've got very large-scale flood defences or flood channels like that, building, just sort of trying to keep up with that flow of water, it's impossible. It floods off the fields and the surrounding areas. For those that work metric, I know I'm in old school in inches and gallons and things, 1 centimetre over 1 square kilometre is 10 million litres. it doesn't really make any difference. It's a large quantity of water, and we've got to find somewhere for it to go. Very difficult. So let's look at some of the implications that come from you being out there, whether you're in your flood warden or road closure warden role, or whether you're just out there trying to save your own properties and premises and things. There's lots of hazards that are out within that water that's swilling around. Let's look at hazardous materials first. We've got chemicals. What sorts of chemicals might you think could be out there? Fuel. Yeah, fuel's a good one. We've all got garages with petrol cans for the mower and the strimmer and so on and so forth. So yeah, we could quite easily have fuels. With some of us may have heating oil tanks for that sort of thing. If they get washed out, then we end up with heavy oils, fuel oils, petrols, diesels, those sorts of things. Industrial chemicals. We've certainly got industrial premises around in the town. If they start to get affected through large-scale flooding, then some of those industrial chemicals could be washed out into our gardens, into our surrounding areas. Household chemicals, again, everything gets washed out from underneath the kitchen sink, out of your garages, your outbuildings, your sheds. So we're looking at all those sorts of things. And again, if you're paddling around in it, then that's contaminating your clothing. We've got dry suits that we use, but of course, if they become contaminated, then we've got issues around how we can then redeploy our crews, even in our kit, because our kit's not impervious to all this sort of stuff. So we have to be very careful what we do. Let's look at biological things. Okay, it sounds a bit more sinister than it perhaps is. Sewage. That's predominantly going to be one of the big things. All the storm drains end up filling with water. We get large quantities of sewage, raw effluent, all that sort of thing. You don't want to be paddling around in that. There are all sorts of, as I'm sure you can imagine, all sorts of nasties that are lurking around in there. Agricultural effluent, yes, we're in a rural area, so we're going to get large quantities of that washing down off the fields and those sorts of things. Waterborne pathogens. Does anybody in the room know anything about waterborne pathogens? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Has anyone heard of something called leptospirosis? Wheels disease, yeah. Wheels disease is the sort of the follow-on from leptospirosis, yeah. That's a fatal disease if it's untreated. That can kill you. Admittedly rare, but you can die from it. That comes predominantly from contact with animal urine, that from cattle and rats. So if we think that all the fields are washed off, all into our streets and stuff, we're paddling around in it, and then we nip in to have a sandwich or perhaps have a cup of tea, something like that. We haven't washed our hands, and all of a sudden we could come down with leptospirosis. Hepatitis B, that's out there as well. Cyanobacteria, that's out there as well. Lots and lots of really serious stuff that can cause us long-term problems, if not be fatal to us. And then there are the issues, if it's large-scale, long-term flooding, like was experienced on the Somerset levels a couple of years ago. Dead, decayed animals, vegetation all rotting down, all washed again into our front gardens, into our high streets. So that's why we need to be aware to not get in it. Keep out of it, try and keep ourselves away from the danger. Right. Those of you that have seen this before, this bit hasn't changed, but it's knowing your area, knowing what the hazards are. So what can you see in that picture? Does anyone spot anything? A whirlpool. Yeah, around about there. Look. Quite a little innocuous whirlpool, yeah? Let's sort of have a look at the bigger picture, a bit closer. There we go. It doesn't look very big, probably a foot across, so yeah, we've got that little bit of a Venturi effect going on. So obviously something's siphoning there. It's got to be, it's like a plug hole, isn't it? Something's going down. Let's have a look at the same area. There's no water. So this could be one of your streets, one of the junctions where we live, and where on earth could that be? Bearing in mind there's the sign, so it was happening somewhere around here. Can we see anything? No, not in that picture we can't. If we turn around, looked at it from the other way, that's a culvert, 24-inch culvert going underneath the road. So all that water is being siphoned down and through those two culvert pipes. So going back to what I said earlier on about knowing your area and being able to misjudge things, you might be walking down the road thinking, well, I know there's a culvert here somewhere. That whirlpool wasn't there. That whirlpool was over here because it's drawing the water down and across. So all of a sudden I can see that must be where the culvert is. Splosh, and we're straight down and straight in there. And that's it, that's the end. There is no coming back from falling in there because that relentless draw, that siphon effect, will pull you straight into there. Right, another case story. This one is very tragic to be honest. It is set in America, admittedly, but this was a residential house, as we can see. Young family, mum, dad, 2 kids, and the youngest son, I think he was 13, if I remember right. A big, large-scale rainstorm, lots of localised flooding, and the whole front garden was flooded. Not ever so deep, but it was flooded, 6-8 inches, something like that. And the youngest son asked Mum, "Is it okay if I go out and have a bit of a splash around in the garden?" "Yeah, of course you can, no problem." Remember we talked about adequate supervision? "Yeah, of course you can, off you go." So off he went, splashing around, great, Mum's got an eye on him out the window, great, brilliant. For about an hour, no sign of him. Mum's thinking, where's he gone? That's a bit unusual. I wonder where he could have disappeared. Has he gone off to his friends? Didn't come in and say he was going out anywhere. Bottom of the garden was a little culvert, little drain. So they suddenly, once the waters have subsided and we're starting to look for him now, can't find him, where on earth could he be? And obviously panic sets in then. We're thinking there's this small drain, small stream, brook type culvert thing at the bottom of the garden. So let's start looking, let's start having a dig. So they dig that steel pipe out, and they have these sort of pipes in the States, and that's a 14-inch pipe. So what's that? That sort of size in diameter, tiny, tiny, tiny pipe. And unfortunately, that's where they found him. They found him inside that pipe. Now, I'm only going to show you that image. I'm not going to show you the other one. But he's bent double. He's literally been folded in half, as you can see, and wedged in there through the force of water. And that was from going out to play in his own front garden. Not being adequately supervised because Mum, and himself, to be fair, didn't understand the dangers of being out playing in puddles in the front garden. So we have to take this sort of thing seriously. Large-scale flooding is really, really serious. And going out on canoes, in your wellies, in your waders, all that sort of thing, it's just not on. You need to keep away from those sorts of areas. So, let's look at this. That's just a highway, large-scale flooding, water moving across the road surface. These are the sort of areas you'd possibly be working in. Large scale of flow there. You could be swept off your feet and down into a drainage ditch, one side. Very easily done, like I've said. So you need to put your road closures in place wherever you need to do. Don't walk through it. Keep well away from it. Again, something similar there. The flow of water on the road is not too bad. Traffic can travel through it. But believe it or not, 6 inches of water could wash one of those cars. If it's coming sideways on, could wash one of those cars off the road. Okay. If you think about a car or a vehicle, how heavy is the average car? A ton, something like that. But what has it got that keeps it to the road? 4 bags of air that help it float. So, although cars might be relatively heavy, once they're submerged in water, they become very light and they become very unstable, and they move sideways very, very easily. And again, we can see another inrush into a culvert there. Yeah. So, have we got any areas like this in Southwell? Potwood Dyke travels under Church Street, so there's certainly a railing type affair there. I'm trying to think what others we've got. Nottingham Road, yeah, Nottingham Road's a classic one, yeah, that was really deep in the last flooding, wasn't it? You could quite easily get swept under there, long gone. So these, wherever the areas you're going to work in, these are the things that you need to be aware of and make friends and relatives aware. What I would suggest, the best way to enjoy it is just like that. Out to the edge of it, fishing rod out, cup of tea, pipe on, away you go. And that is me, I'm afraid.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. The Communications Hub is a central point of communication in the town during and after an emergency situation for residents and wardens. It's a meeting point for volunteers who can be deployed as appropriate in an emergency. It's also a focal point for the emergency Category 1 responders, providing on-the-ground feedback and information. It will coordinate media contact. This is a dramatisation of the dry run of the Comms Hub to illustrate how it could operate during a flooding incident. The people involved are those according to their role in the Southwell Town Council or Southwell Flood Forum. The team has a dry run every year to refresh the protocol and act as an induction for any new personnel. If there is an actual emergency, there will be a feedback meeting to review the procedures. We welcome comments and observations from you from today's exercise to help refine the process. The people involved are, on the Southwell Town Council, Beryl Prentice, Peter Harris, and Peter Cllr.
He's magically appeared.
Chicken.
On the Southwell Flood Forum, Community Resilience and Emergency Planning Team, David Martin.
It's me.
Sorry, I've not. James Parker and Jackie Houston. It's Monday, June the 22nd, the year 2020, at 2200 hours in Southwell. It's been raining all weekend. The forecast shows continued heavy rain, and we've had a yellow warning of rain in the East Midlands. The radar map showed the centre of the storm heading our way. Those who've signed up to Floodline have received an alert. Wardens and residents have been keeping an eye on the weather. Looking at hotspots, that is potential blockage areas and areas where road closure trigger points are. All those at risk have been preparing themselves for a potential flooding incident by following their personal emergency plan. Wardens have been talking with each other to make sure they know who's available, if needed, and if there's any vulnerable people at risk. Then, Rob Jordan phones James to say that the trigger has been met on Kirklington Road and he's closing the road. James phones members of the comms hub. All those in the comms hub ensure their property and car are safe. They might need to inform family and neighbours and then make their way to the town council offices on the Burgage with their grab bags, Warden toolkit and laptop if possible. All the people involved have access to the town council offices in an emergency. They meet in the Bramley suite where the comms hub equipment is stored. Mobile phones are kept charged, maps of Southwell, stationery items, a comms hub folder containing all the information for contacts and procedures. Log sheets are available for the people who keep records of all calls in and out and the action taken. The first job is for roles to be assigned. Some may be doubled up depending on the number of people available. The roles are map marker, to identify and mark problem areas. Receptionist, who receives and logs visitors. Telephonist, who receives and logs phone calls. Road closure coordinator, logs progress on road closures. Media communicator, controller resilience store, and anything else as appropriate. So, when people arrive, the Category 1 responders are informed as a priority. All lead wardens will be phoned to inform them that the comms hub is open and obtain an assessment of what's happening in each huddle area.
Right, let's confirm who's doing which roles. David, could you do the map marking and monitor when roads are closed, please?
Yeah, no problem. I've pinned the map up already and got the marker pins and can log the road closures as and when they happen and note any hotspots and problems.
Jackie, can you take and log incoming phone calls?
Yeah, that's fine. I've got one of the mobile phones and the log sheet.
Peter, can you make and log outgoing calls? Firstly, can you please phone Rob Jordan and check that all his road closure points are closed and let Notts County Council know that we've started road closures?
Yes, that's okay. I've got the other mobile and the phone log.
I'll keep an eye if anyone comes to collect anything from the resilience store, and I'll take calls from the media.
So I'll make a call. Hi Rob, it's Peter at the Communications Hub. Could you please confirm which points on the Kirklington Road huddle you've closed?
They're all closed and we're checking on a couple of our vulnerable neighbours.
That's good. Hope you're safe. Let us know if there are any problems. Bye. David, could you note that all the points on Kirklington Road are closed?
Will do. I'll put those on the map now.
I'll make another call. Hello, it's Peter Harris at the Southwell Communications Hub here. I'm phoning to confirm we've started our road closure procedures. And this is to the Highways Authority. The trigger has been met on Kirklington Road, and other areas are keeping an eye on their trigger points.
Thank you for letting us know. We are aware of the emergency situation and will get support to you as soon as we are able.
Thank you. We'll keep you informed of any difficulties.
Hello, Comms Hub here, Jackie speaking.
Hi Jackie, it's Stephen Rogers in the CHE chat huddle. I can't get hold of anyone else in my huddle. The rain is coming in really heavily on East Thorpe now. I'm going to drag my signs out right close to the Fiskerton Road junction. Afterwards I've got to go and check on my grandchildren, but I'll continue to try and get hold of other huddle members to stay with the signs.
Okay, so can I just confirm there's no one to put out signs at the Church Street closure point?
That's right. I've not been able to contact anyone else to see if there are any around to put signs out there.
Okay, the Kirklington huddle has already closed their road, so it might not be long before the trigger is met on Church Street. We'll try the other huddle members and the Newark huddle to see if they can help while you concentrate on getting the signs ready and checking on your grandchildren. Thanks for letting us know. Keep us informed of any progress. Bye. Peter.
Yeah.
I'm
here.
Peter, could you please phone Colin Bolter, the lead warden on the Newark huddle?
Colin, yes.
And see if he can spare anyone to help out on the Church Street huddle. We need the signs out at the Church Street end. Then could you keep trying the other huddle members on Church Street?
Yes, I'll see. Look them up in the handbook directory.
This is my other phone. This is my own mobile now. Hello, Jackie Houston. Hello, Jackie.
Hello Jackie, it's Carolyn Moses from East Midlands Today. We've heard there's flooding in Southwell.
Yes, that's right. We've started our road closure scheme. I'll just pass you to Beryl, our Town Council Chair.
Hello Carolyn, we're actually really busy at the moment, but just confirming what Jackie said, that we're aware parts of Southwell have started to flood, so we've implemented our road closure scheme and are keeping in contact with our wardens, the emergency services and NCC. I'm sorry I can't tell you any more at the moment. Hope you understand.
Yes, of course. I'm sorry to hear you're at risk. We've put out a broadcast that people should avoid entering any flood areas in Southwell and to let their families know if they're unable to return home because of the flooding.
Thank you, that'd be really helpful. Bye.
I found Colin Bolter's number. Hi Colin, have you started to prepare the closure signs yet?
Yes, luckily there are 4 of us around, so we got onto the task quite quickly.
Well, that's good news. Thank you, Colin. Could you spare someone to help out at the Church Street closure? The signs are in the Dean's residence, at the back of the residence there at the Dean, so someone could come via Beecher's Walk to avoid the flooded area.
Of course, I'll send Ian and he'll let you know when he's there.
Thank you.
I'm noting that the signs in the new huddle area are in place, ready for the trigger, and that Ian's moving to the Church Street closure point in Church Street.
I'm also going to phone Stephen. Stephen, just to let you know that Ian from the new huddle will put out the Church Street signs. We'll keep trying the Church Street wardens to see if someone can get to keep an eye on the situation at the Fiskerton Road junction.
Thanks, that's very helpful.
Hello, Comms Hub here, Jackie speaking.
Hello, it's Katie Miller here. I've just got home. I had to leave my car in Church Street car park. I see no one's got the Church Street signs. I can do that.
Oh, thanks, Katie, for your offer, but actually Ian's making his way over from the Newark huddle, so it would be better if you can go down to the Fiskerton Road junction. Stephen's put the signs out near the road closure point, so if you could keep an eye on the trigger point on the Potwell, then let Ian know when the trigger is met, so he can let us know when he's closed the road. Then if you could let us know when you close the Fiskerton Road junction.
Okay, I'll do that. Bye.
I'm noting that Kate is going to the Church Street closure at Fiskerton Road, and I'm going to put it on the map.
Right, so we hope that gives a flavour of how the Comms Hub could work in a flooding incident. When we had our dry run, it was very valuable to show just how important this central point of contact could be and helped us refine the processes. While we hope it's not a situation that will happen, like anything, being prepared makes us all the more resilient and feel more able to cope in an emergency. We would welcome your comments and suggestions about the procedures, not the acting. Praise, of course. It may be that something occurs to you after you've gone home, so please don't hesitate to contact us.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, we've one more important presentation of this set of presentations to do with how to keep safe in any emergency, but certainly in a flood emergency in particular. I'm going to give a talk about manual handling, and we're going to touch on some other safety issues as well. And Mick is still here from Highways, and Mick will keep me right and chip in if I've missed anything. Now, when we talk about manual handling, we're talking about lifting and lowering and carrying and pushing and pulling things. So what I'm going to say now applies as much in your everyday life as it does to in an emergency. It's sort of thing which, if you're performing these actions incorrectly or excessively, then the task could expose you to the risk of injury, can lead to damaged muscles and strains and tensions, and affect ligaments and nerves and blood vessels. So you need to do this carefully. I'm going to give you 10 top tips during the course of the presentation, so I hope you'll find them useful. And I will also go on to emphasise some of the points that Fraser's made and touch on some of the other safety issues. Now, road closure wardens are acting on behalf of the County Council, and so part of that deal to allow you to do that is to attend this training. At the end of this session, as you leave this room, could I ask you all to make sure you do sign the form and make sure your neighbours sign the form, because we need to keep a record of who has been trained so that you've got, you're covered by the County Council's insurance if you're involved in any road traffic accident or other related to a future flood emergency when the closure scheme is in usage. Now, those of you who participated in the previous training or the practical session a moment ago, you'll have seen that the signs themselves are not very heavy. Mick made the point, though, that if it is blowing a gale, then they can become awkward to use, and if you get a force of wind behind them, they can be difficult to handle. So you have to take care with that. If it is windy, you may very well want to use a sandbag to drape across the arm of the sign at the back to give it some stability, and so it'll stay upright in the wind and do its job to warn traffic. So you may well be handling sandbags. So from the County Council's point of view, that's probably the most strenuous thing we're going to be asking you to do. The cones, those of you who volunteered to help me lift the cones across, you know that individually they're not very heavy, but they do stack, and I saw one or two of you doing 2 or 3 or 4 together, and then they do get a bit heavy. And if you're lugging those very far, you have to take care. Tip number 1 of my 10 tips is to know your limits. We're all very different, and please do think consciously about what you're taking on. So know your limits is tip number 1. Now, in any emergency, you might find yourself in an unusual, unfamiliar and possibly hostile environment. And from the County Council's point of view and our road closure scheme, we're absolutely not asking yourself to put yourself in any danger whatsoever. Faced with a difficult and potentially dangerous situation, you're asked to pause, take stock, and consider what needs to be done. So top tip number 2, do a risk assessment. Ask yourself, what could happen here? What are the dangers? And how do you reduce the risk? So do a risk assessment. Now, turning to the practicalities of manual handling, about lifting, think about how you're going to lift something before you start to pick it up. Get into a good posture. As the slide says, think about a boxer's stance. One thing you'll notice about a boxer when they're in the boxing ring is that their knees will be bent. And that is tip number 3 for any manual handling: bend your knees. So as you start to lift, again, keep thinking about your posture. You have to think about where you're lifting from, where you're lifting to, and the distance you've got to travel. So tip number 4, make a plan before you start. And that leads straight into number 5, use mechanical aids if you possibly can. So if you have a trolley, a wheelbarrow, or something else to enable you to transfer the weight more easily, tip 5 is use mechanical aids. Now, once you've lifted the load, again, try and keep a mind on your posture. Think about how you're carrying the load. Keep it close to your body. Keep elbows tucked in and so on. Keep it near to the centre of your gravity. And as the little picture in the corner shows, top tip number 6, keep your head up. Now, you have to think about what it is you are lifting. Does it have sharp edges? Do you need to think about protecting your hands? Is it heavy, and if you dropped it on your toe, would you know about it? So tip number 7 is to wear suitable clothing. You may want to wear gloves, or certainly stout shoes. So, having lifted it, and you might at this point be regretting lifting it or regretting not planning your move a bit more, but if you're in this situation, one thing you might want to think about is if you were going to, instead of lifting, if you wanted to push or pull, tip number 8 is that it's better and safer to push something than to pull it. And straight into number 9 is avoid twisting or leaning, as the lower back really isn't able or designed to cope with repetition of twists under this sort of load. So those are the top 9. The number 10 is about getting some practice at this. I'm giving you some of the theory, but number 10 is to get some practical training. You might want to try and practice this at home, put it into practice and see how it feels, but ideally attend some physical practical training. Those of you who've attended this talk before, when John Nyland has delivered it, he talks about the acronym TILE, task, individual, load, environment. Something to sort of think about as part of your risk assessment. What is it you're trying to do? What is the task? Is it going to be repetitive? Is it something you're familiar with? Are you doing it under time pressures, or can you plan ahead? Think about yourself. How experienced are you at this work? Physically conditioned to the task? What else is going on in the environment? Are you being distracted by other things? The weight itself, the load, can you get a good grip? How heavy is it? How stable is the ground you're working in? And beyond that, the general environment. Cold, is it wet, uneven ground, and what time of the day is it? Have you got good light to work in? That all feeds into your risk assessment to help you to keep yourself safe. I'll say a few words about sandbags. There are alternatives which I'm sure you know about, and you probably do know about the sort of weight they can become. So you want to reduce the load, not overfill an individual sandbag. If possible, again, lone working, try not to do this all on your own, have 2 people there. If you've got things you can use like a trolley to move things around, help lift them up, then please do, and have them pre-positioned where you can so that they're handy when you need them. You know that a modest wall of sandbags, say 10 sandbags, can be pretty heavy. They're heavy to start with just dry weight. When you double it to make it wet, you see that the move you're going to make soon becomes a considerable weight when you're dealing with wet sandbags. Aqua sacks much better, the dry materials in aqua sacks, but again, you can quickly accumulate quite a weight once they are wet. Now this slide contains a whole range of topics you can put into your risk assessment. Looking around the environment, thinking about all the things that you might find that could give rise to risk. I won't go through them all individually. Some of these you've heard about already. Leptospirosis we'll come back to say a word about again later on. But those are the sorts of things you need to be looking for with your risk assessment. And you're going to be looking to try and reduce risk where you can. You may not be able to eliminate the hazard, might not be much you can do to reduce it, but you can then start to prevent contact. Safe systems of working, this is about avoiding contamination, for example, wearing PPE so you've got the correct sort of footwear on and gloves and so on. So those are the sort of things you need to be mindful of to try and reduce the risk that you're exposing yourself to. I want to elaborate a little on the themes that Fraser was covering when we're looking at the specific area where you are going to be closing a road. When you're doing your specific risk assessment, I know many of you have done this already, we've done it when we've walked around already, it needs to be under continual review. Look at your area, identify key hazards. We've already talked about putting them onto maps, which is exactly what we need to do. Note reference points, keep a record, take some photographs and so on, because this is exactly the sort of thing that we know is around and about in Southwell, and that's one of those slides that Fraser used to illustrate how different it can look in a flood emergency. So exactly as you've described, you're making a note of these on your map so you're ready when you go out in a future emergency. You know where the drain is, so if it is off, you know exactly where it is, and you know the hazard that's involved. That again is a slide that Fraser used. I make no apology for repeating it. I think it bears repetition. I think it's made sobering listening when we're hearing Fraser. And very nearly the end of my presentation, can't finish without reminding you to be conscious of biological hazards in the flood water, leptospirosis, mild symptoms like colds, flu-like symptoms, headaches, chills, etc. But in some cases, as we've heard, it can be much more severe. You have organ failure and internal bleeding, and in rare occasions, death. So, through all of this, I've given you 10 tips for manual handling. I think the number one overarching tip is really to keep out of the flood water, encourage others to warn neighbours and friends if they are venturing in of the hazards, so stay away from the flood water if you possibly can. So I'll stop there and throw it open if there are any questions or other contributions anyone wants to make.